What's going on, everybody? Brandon with Strict Vision Athletics here with Chris Desmarchais. How's it going, buddy?
Good, bro.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man. Seriously. For those of you guys who didn't catch, oh boy, I shouldn't even say what episode it was because I don't remember. I want to say 4.
3 or 4.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
Episode 3 or 4, Chris came on, and we're going to go into what he does and everything that we're doing that's in common. But he is doing a very similar thing that I'm doing. We're actually in the exact same master's program. We're both going to finish that up in about 4 months. And he is a private trainer, and he does exactly what I do here 3 or 4 streets away. So we're already kind of doing the same path, and we have a lot of the same ideas and a lot of similar and also some different training methods. I think we do things along the same way, but we do them sometimes in different styles. So today's topic came from somebody who was asking about older population training, and I kind of wanted to take that and branch it and go into special populations, whether that's an older adult, whether that's a youth, any sort of an athlete that's, under the age of 18, and then anybody in between gym pop to pro, and just kind of hear your opinion on what, if any, training differential there is between those, and just kind of go, I'd like to go category by category, kind of talk about the different styles of periodization, maybe the different equipment that you recommend or see, anything like that. Do me a favor, bud, just because it's gonna. Just said it like.
And I'm Eli, by the way. I didn't give an introduction.
I would just the guys. That's the other thing, because we're live. That is why Eli is here. If you guys have questions about anything that we start talking about, and he and I are gonna just talk. Like, if you do have a question, you need to post it, and he will interrupt us because we're not gonna stop, and I can't see your questions on the monitor anyway. So that being said, let's just dive right into it. Did that person have a question right out of the gate? Or?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's more for Chris, but how do I convince my wife to let me buy more gym equipment?
That's for me?
For my garage. Oh, you're the only one who has a wife.
Oh, that's a good question.
That's true. It's because you have a wife.
I do. She's pretty much on board with all my stuff, but
get yourself a fit wife.
She's just got to see the benefit of it, right? You got to get more jacked, so she likes it, and then you say, hey, if you want my arms bigger, I need this, Just sell it that way. That's my recommendation.
And there's also a point to be said that most of your equipment you had prior to marrying her. Oh, yeah. So she's kind of been brought into it. She's
grandfathered
into the existing equipment. Right. But that doesn't mean you can't get more, too. There's so much cool stuff coming out.
Sure.
Even now, that squeeze bar is like, I can't believe the technology that's going into equipment. Still things are changing. But anyway, that's a good question. Bring on the rest. Let's talk about older persons first. Let's kind of start at the top and go down. What do you have you trained anybody, call it 65 or over?
Yeah, I definitely have. I mean, I think with any of the special populations, particularly older adults, there's definitely going to be a range, right? Just an age itself is not going to necessarily dictate exactly what you're going to do. Like, you could have somebody, especially in that age range, right? Like, you could have people who have been training or been doing athletic type of activities for a long period of time, and they just happen to now be 70 years old. Or you could have someone who's been sedentary for the past 30 years, whatever, right? Overweight, etc. One of the things that you're going to have to be cautious of just off the bat with anybody who is aging is going to be the strength of their bones. That's going to be something that's going to degrade as they get older.
Osteoporosis.
Right.
Especially in older women.
Correct, yeah. So you're going to have to be cognizant of, how you're loading it, like how you're loading the skeleton, how like high impact you're going to be.
Yeah.
Like anything else, I mean, one thing that I think that people, sometimes older adults or something could get discouraged from training because they think they can't do anything. But with anybody, you have to start at wherever your starting point is, and you can progress from there. You can still make progression even at an older age. There's lots of things that have really no time cap on, being great, like flexibility or things of that nature. But even strength, wherever you're starting from, you can still improve on it. You might not have the ceiling that you had when you were 35, but you can still get stronger, And Definitely. So it's all about finding a starting point that's appropriate and then making small progressions. Anybody who's of that age is likely to have more things that you're going to have to watch out for. Just
more time on earth.
Yeah,
more
exactly.
Injuries.
More injuries.
It's kind of the way it is.
Postural stuff that depending on their age, you generally start to see, certain things, starting to hunch and stuff like that. And, but I mean, it's hard to paint with a broad brush, but besides some of those things that you're going to have to naturally look out for, I think you got to treat it on a case by case basis. But
yeah, definitely.
I have had some success with doing just that. And like one person that I actually worked with, upper 60s maybe, and it's not somebody who had been training, but we just started with like very simple body weight kind of stuff. And we were actually training remotely. So I was training her on FaceTime.
Oh, nice.
And
wow.
so, we just started with, basically from the core out. So we wanted to stabilize that first and then, let that translate to other movements. So just a lot of plank variations, bird dogs, glute bridging, stuff like that.
Sure.
To just get that trunk stronger. And then we started adding like some weighted carries, some squatting to a chair with weight, things like that. Just to like I said, start getting the body more accustomed to an external load, and then just progress in small steps.
There's a cool concept that I read about a month ago, and it was the principle of progression through regression. And that is as it pertains to trainers and the activities that they are putting their older populations through. And that's something that it's something I kind of picked up later in the game, because for me, everything was almost always progression. Like I had kind of a starting point on where most gym pop people would be, because I didn't really deal with a lot of older adults. I did a TRX class in college for older adults at a senior home, but other than that, once that was done, I didn't deal with any special population in the older variety for another like 10 years. But progression through regression dictates that trainers need to be able to look at their average gym pop starting line and look at those assortment of different activities and figure out ways to regress them and move that starting line from here back to here.
Yeah.
And that comes with a certain challenge, because you think, okay, how do I make a body weight air squat easier? Like, how do I do that? And that is a great example of something that I have really, really dug into recently, especially when it comes to older population, are body weight exercises that can now also be assisted. So, I mean, and you're talking somebody who most likely is having difficulty with their mobility, having difficulty walking around, because obviously if you're having difficulty doing a body weight squat, you've got a lot of prior existing problems that we have to work past. So yeah, progression through regression. That's a really, really good concept for older populations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but knowing the movement patterns that you think are important for anybody to train, right? And I mean, this could kind of feed into the conversation more broadly, because with any population, we're all human beings, right? So there's fundamental movement patterns that we need to be able to perform to function properly. Like we need to be able to squat, hinge, press something, pull something, right? And so within those categories, there's a wide range of movements that you can do, increasing complexity, load, all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, like if I have a great pro athlete or grandma, like the goal is still going to be able to accomplish all of the movement patterns, limiting any major injuries or something. We want to be able to accomplish all the major movement patterns, and it's going to be varying degrees of performance on those things, right? It could be squatting, holding onto a rack to a box versus doing, a super heavy safety bar squat. It's the same movement, but it's all scalable within that. We got
in trouble because we did a video, I don't know, 2 weeks ago or something, where I made a statement saying that everybody should be deadlifting. And that was, misinterpreted, but I did say it, so I guess not really misinterpreted. Going back and reiterating, I should have said everybody should be hinging. When I said that, obviously we got just pelted with comments from people who were like, my back's hurt since I was 9. There's no way I should be deadlifting. But like you said, fundamental movement patterns, everybody should be touching on them in some way.
I hope you never put anything on the ground then, because you're going to have to pick it up at some point, right?
This is crazy concept.
Yeah. So it's people, they say deadlifting. Well, So anything can be in a deadlift. Like I could put my cup on the ground and pick it up. That's a deadlift,
Yeah.
you know, if I bend over and hinge over and pick
And
it up.
people get hurt
Right.
doing that.
It doesn't have to be with a barbell. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be heavy, but you're going to have to know how to hinge in order to be a functional human.
Yeah.
And if you lose that capacity, the more that you can train that, the less likely you're going to lose that capacity as you age. So that's another thing to consider is the benefits of training going into that aging phase is going to preserve a lot of your functional movements whereas other people would lose them.
Yeah.
Your balance, your stability, your bone mineral density, things that are going to make you more resilient to injury that can occur because of some of those age-related conditions. Like if you've been training, you're less likely to break your hip when you fall when you're older, right? Because you're not going to have the frailty of your bones. If you've been eating healthy, if you've been loading your body for a lot of years, you're going to decline, but your starting point's going to be so much higher.
Right.
So,
and not necessarily assigning, like you mentioned, not assigning an age to this training for an older population, quote unquote.
Right.
There's people that, are in their 50s.
Oh, yeah.
That need to train like they're in their 70s.
Absolutely.
And that's a result of lots of factors, but that doesn't matter.
Right.
As the trainer, you
Absolutely.
have to treat it that way. And
I'm in my 20s and I have to train that way.
Is that a comment or is that you?
No, that's me.
Yeah, you're doing all right.
No, I actually do have a
good.
question for you because your background, you did do like Olympic lifting, correct?
Yes.
So we actually created a video probably this last week of kind of comparing power cleans compared to hang cleans. And when we were doing like our own research and actually, well, let me say not we, when I was actually going on YouTube and like looking at different things, there wasn't like a universal way of doing that one exercise. That's kind of what you were saying about like the different, like everything is considered a deadlift versus... Do you kind of get what I'm trying to say?
I get what you're saying, yeah. I mean, with the specific example you gave, like power clean versus hang clean is just meaning that you're not starting from the floor, technically, if you're going from an Olympic lifting standpoint. I don't know if you mean like a power clean or like a full clean into a squat. There's different variations of any of the lifts. Hang clean would just mean that you're starting from above the ground. It could be hovering from 2 inches off the ground. But what I'm meaning more so is that, and this is kind of what we're discussing, is like you can find, if you know that you want to, right, a person needs to be able to hinge from the waist, because if you're going to pick something up, that's the movement that you're going to have to do. But it certainly can be dangerous because that movement is loading the spine very significantly, probably more so than any other major movement pattern.
Sure.
If done loaded, not necessarily, you could be hinging and doing a back extension, you'd be unloaded in that case. But, if you're talking about a deadlift, you are going to be loading the spine significantly. However, you want to find the appropriate method to which that person can do it in a way that they can do it pain-free and they can do it with good form. And then you want to strengthen that, because the gym should be an environment in which you can safely strengthen those things, so that when you get outside of the gym is not when you end up tweaking your back, picking up the laundry basket, which is what usually ends up happening. People say, I have a bad back, I can't deadlift. They avoid that movement pattern entirely, but you're still going to have to pick stuff up in real life. So then you go to do it, you're not strong, you don't know how to move your body properly, and that's when you end up getting hurt. So
having a program that will adapt to you as opposed to you adapting to the program, especially in the beginning when you're trying to get past those prior injuries or past limitations, like you mentioned. I mean, you want the gym to be the area where you prepare for life. And you don't want to get hurt here.
Right.
If I have somebody with a hip limitation, they can't get down. They cannot pick up the trap bar off the ground and do a deadlift. I will add. This goes into the next part of my question, which is the equipment. But you ever see those 90-degree or those the orange grips?
Yeah,
with the little
extended
wrap?
higher, basically.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Extended higher. So that's just one simple idea. That was going to be the next transition I wanted to make and ask, was because we're talking about older populations, do you have any advice on what kinds of equipment you would recommend for somebody who comes, again, over 65, somebody with a 65-year-old's problems?
Yeah.
Anything you would advise people pick up if someone is...
Well, very basic. I think I would start with, generally, I would start with body weight movements if they haven't been training, right? Like, I think that's one of the lowest impact ways to start getting some resistance training in. That's simple. It's easy. There's a very long way you can go in progression that's very low risk just with body weight exercise. Like if you're an older adult and you can get to the point where you can do a body weight, Bulgarian split squat, that's really good, right? You've got a lot of stability in that leg. You've got a lot of strength in that leg. As far as picking up equipment from that point, I mean, I like resistance bands, just general, they can just, they be the ones with the handles or just the regular bands. The benefit on using those is you can actually assist a lot of body weight movements using those to make them easier when you're not ready for the full movement. For example, like putting the band in a squat rack to do a push-up on to give you some help, or to hang from the pull-up bar to give you help, or
to hang from the pull-up bar when doing a squat.
Yeah, exactly. To hold yourself up a little bit. Yep. Also, the bands tend to be very joint friendly when doing exercises because they're taking tension off in the most stretched position. So like, for example, if you're doing a tricep extension, like most people know the rope tricep extensions. Well, if you're using a band at the top where there's the greatest stretch on the elbow right here, the band is lighter because it's not as stretched out. So it's going to unload that more vulnerable position and give you a little more tension where you have a mechanical advantage towards the bottom where you're a little bit stronger. Right. So it tends to fit that a little bit better.
And it's easy to adjust because you can move your hand up.
Yeah, super easy, super cheap, very portable. Another piece of equipment that I recommend for a lot of people that I really like is a sled. Sled.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, for just like a normal dragging sled that you can drag in the street and put weights on, or drag in your backyard or whatever if you have room. A lot of the same reasons. It's extremely easy there's not a lot of technique to it. So you can pull a sled, walk backwards with it, walk forwards with it. Very low learning curve, but it'll get you very strong. But because there's not an eccentric component to the lift, like if you're dragging a sled,
it doesn't fall down.
You're not lowering the weight. It's not causing as much tissue damage because you're not, if you're really trying to, cause a lot of soreness and muscle damage, you're going to really accentuate that eccentric, on a curl. You're going to slow on the way down, really stretch it. Well, on a sled pull or push, you're only stepping forward. Sure. You're not getting any eccentric. It's like riding a bike. So you can get a lot of work to the muscles and you can get a lot of blood into the joints, which can be very restorative, but you're not getting as much breakdown. So it's going to be much easier to recover from. And you can do lots of stuff with it. You can walk forward, backward, side step with it. You can row it as you walk. You can press it as you walk if you have the straps.
Pull with a rope.
Face pulls, Y pulls, curl it as you walk, tricep extensions,
crawls, yeah.
Anything. Yeah, bear crawls. So it's just very versatile, cheap, easy on the body. Low learning curve. So
only difficulty is that I suppose if we're talking, trainers, then they could buy it and find a spot. But the only difficulty with the sled is, if you're dealing with an older population, A, the weather has to be enjoyable enough for them to go outside, and B, you have to transport it. So either they have to own it, which is unlikely, or you have to transport it. So
if you have one, the weather is certainly a thing. I guess living in Arizona, I don't really think about that as much. It's maybe $50 on Rogue, and you could pull it out in front of your street, out front of your house. That's what I do. You would need like a couple metal plates, get them used, and get a sled. I like the sled. There's a million things, but those would be a couple that jump to the top of my mind. Yeah.
Yep. No, I like that. I would add TRX. That's probably the number one thing that I would advise actually for it's close between that and bands, because bands are both, you can progress or regress depending on how you use them. So bands would probably win, but no, for me it would be the TRX for the next one.
I would agree.
That was one of I took like a online TRX certification that comes with the package when you get it, and
what's a TRX?
TRX is up there. See the yellow. I know the camera.
It's a suspension trainer, so it could be a pair of rings or something. Would kind of do the same general thing.
It can do some. The thing with TRX is that it can incorporate lower body. It's hard to incorporate lower body with rings. You can't hook your foot in. Yeah, exactly. But TRX does a good job of allowing both. Yeah. And if you do have an understanding of biomechanics, you can do a lot of work with lower body with doing that. And that's one of my. That's probably one of my earliest progressions for older populations after bands. Once they show me they can do bands, sometimes they can't even go when they go from band assisted to body weight. that's the first progression they make is to TRX.
Gotcha.
Because that allows them to help themselves up, but not in a way that like the band is doing the work for them.
Right.
They have to help themselves up by pulling.
Yeah.
So at least it's something else. But yeah, TRX.
And on that note, you'd probably agree with this. Just a very simple TRX or ring, like body weight row, is one of like the best entry exercises you could start with, because like any horizontal pulling motion is going to be great for your posture. It's going to be good for your shoulders, and it's so scalable, right? You could stand basically vertical and row yourself and have almost no weight, or you could, invert, put your feet on a box and do some inverted
Totally
rows.
flat
And it'd be
pull.
tough for a fit person.
Yeah.
So it's very scalable. So anything, that's a
just
great
bring
example.
Your feet in if you want it easier, and
Right.
push them back out if you want it harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the questions that we got, since we're still on the topic of equipment, is when you were buying equipment, like what type of brands, especially when it comes to plates specifically, do you guys recommend if someone is building their home gym?
I would say, what is your budget? I mean, like he said, you can just get some used. Well, actually, these days you probably will pay a lot for those too. But you can get used if you're just trying to get something that you're going to leave outside and use on a sled. That's what I did. My outdoor plates are just used.
But for new plates, you'd probably agree, probably Rogue. I mean, Rogue just has the best selection because they have a very wide range from like super cheap bumper plates and steel plates to like calibrated steel plates where they're down to like the 0.01 pound, and they're super, machined out and all that. But they have the biggest selection of anyone I'm aware of. But I would definitely check, like Brandon said, any like Facebook Marketplace, that sort of thing, because they'll pop up on there.
You can find them on there.
Yeah. Shipping weights is very expensive.
Shipping weights is very expensive. Those the new ones, they cost as much to ship as they did to buy.
Yeah, you're just shipping dead weight, literally.
Yeah, literally. And it's to do 5 through 100. I think they did the math. I think it's like 1,100 pounds to do all that, to do a full line of dumbbells.
Not cheap.
But if I were to recommend the best overall plate, I think it's the Rogue 6-shooter rubberized.
Those are cool.
I think it's just those. I think they just have the most. I like 6-shooter plates.
Yeah, they're cool.
I actually love 6-shooter
kind of old
plates.
school. Yeah.
You can move them easily. You can put them on, put them. That's the thing about those. To be honest, I mean, the sexy factor is there, but moving those things around and everything, because they're
very dense.
They magnetize to one another. You can't even. You have to like grow your nails out to pull them off.
Yeah.
And they look really cool, and they did a really, really good thing making them. But
those are made basically for someone who needs them to be that skinny to fit that many on a bar, because they're pulling like 800 pounds, So
which I don't.
But I like the 6-shooters. I have like the just regular Rogue steel machine plates, like the kind of deep dish.
I love.
They're
the
not
deep
super
dish.
deep dish. They're like medium, which is nice because they're a good width. Like you can fit them on the bar. They're not super thick. But those are super solid. I haven't had any problems with them. They wear pretty well. I don't think they're American made. I think those ones are Chinese made.
Seriously?
They're making an American deep dish now. Rogue is. I think.
I didn't know Rogue did anything that wasn't American. That's on their logo. It's like American made.
I think those plates, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure those plates are not from America.
From China.
Yeah.
Well, those dumbbells aren't from America. They're from China. I mean,
I'm pretty sure the Rogue dumbbells they sell are not American made either.
interesting.
It's not everything. I mean, their stuff is manufactured here, but
what? You lied to me.
Some stuff they just stamp Rogue on. Some of their stuff,
Yeah.
But,
well, so much of this stuff is probably made overseas anyway. I mean, they just make. You should see the warehouse that I got those from. It's ridiculous. It's the size of like 2 or 3 football fields.
Wow.
This place, but okay. So that's older populations. Let's transition. Let's talk about Gen Pop, and then let's talk about advanced. Mm-hmm. Let's go kind of in the middle now. So we'll end with youth, but let's hit the middle. So. With Gen Pop and with advanced, I want to talk about the different progressions as far as what I've been researching recently is the correlation between multilateral training and then specialty training, and just sort of how programs, someone, for example, someone in a more advanced program would spend a significantly smaller amount of time doing a general physical multilateral program and just kind of jump right ahead to a specialty program. Someone who's training for a specific reason, a sport, an event, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What would you say is we'll start with Gen Pop because it's definitely more important to talk about. What would you say is the amount of time that you spend with somebody who, let's say it's a 37-year-old man, somebody who comes in with a moderate background but is out of shape, what kind of a split would you say there is between a general and then a sort of specialty transition from one to the other? How much time would you say should be spent there?
Well, I mean, that's a tricky question because I don't even know what kind of quote unquote specialty training someone like that would need, you know, because unless that person like that comes to me with, you know, I'm going to ask anybody who starts with me some basic questions like, you know, injury history, goals, all that stuff.
Sure.
But also, you know, goals for why are we training? Like, is it just to look better? You know, do you have hobbies? Like, are you a golfer or something like that? Right. So, you know, in your example, like maybe somebody like that would, you know, likes to play golf. Like it's one of their hobbies. So I would consider that. And I would say, you know, okay, maybe we don't have, if we're really out of shape, you don't quite have the capacity right now to maybe do some more quote unquote specialty stuff.
Transverse plane.
Yeah, you know, explosive rotational medicine ball throws or something like that. You know, maybe you don't quite have the capacity built up there. So we're going to do a little more general for a while to build into some of those movements.
Sure.
But it's not necessarily going to be a pre-set time frame. I'm just going to be continually evaluating them to see when they're ready.
That's an interesting point. Do you have a sort of calendar that you follow with new clients? Like, do you have okay, here's evaluation number 1 after this period, evaluation number 2? So
I always evaluate people starting out, and then I more so for me, and this is the benefit of like, or you know, every trainer may do it different, but one of the benefits of working with the trainer is like they're going to be seeing you train day in and day out. It's kind of, I thought of it earlier when we were talking about the starting point, finding a starting point with like an older adult. It's going to be very, very difficult for somebody like that to find the correct starting point on their own, because you're not going to be able to just get a program and start following it if you don't know what you're doing. You don't know where the starting point is set for that program or what fitness level it's made for. Somebody with a good background of watching people move and understanding of exercise progressions and regressions is going to help set you on the starting point. Maybe you're in a place where you can start training with them till you have an understanding, and then you can start working remotely or something like that. But finding the starting point, if you don't know what you're doing, is going to be very difficult if you have any sort of pre-existing limitations. But for me with my clients, it's kind of like a fluid conversation of how their goals are evolving and, you know, what we're doing in the program to meet them. So I'm always asking people like, how are you feeling? You know, how's your body feeling? And all of that feedback is going to influence how I might, you know, create the next week of their program. 'Cause I'll create week by week for people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once we're done with the week, I just sit down. And my general, and we can dive into like programming here, but my general template for most people is usually about a 4-week progression and then introducing some new variations. So I'll do like a week by week progression on basically the same workout. So say if someone was training with me 4 times a week and we have 2 upper sessions, 2 lower sessions, that's usually how I'll do a split for somebody training 4 times a week.
Sure.
I'll do 2 upper, 2 lower, and it'll be the same workouts for 3 weeks. We'll be increasing. So increasing reps, increasing weight, doing some sort of progressive overload there. And then if the intensity warrants it and they're consistent enough, we'll do a deload week in which we'll drop the intensity, allow the compensation to occur, allow the body to recover.
So you end with your deload week on week number 4.
On a week 4, And this isn't always like cut and dry like this, but this is like a general template. On the 4th week, we'll deload, and then the next like, you know, micro cycle will start. And so in that case, it's going to be new variations. So, and the amount can vary. Like if somebody has a specific goal that they're pushing for, like for example, one of my clients right now really wants to get his bench up. So there's going to be some exercises, you know, if you have like a very specific goal, I'm going to have the exercises that I think are the best to accomplish that. And that's what we're going to be doing. It might not be as fun or as different because you're going to need to be hammering that thing.
Now, if you want to get better at bench, you got to bench.
Yeah, you're going to be out to benching. You're going to be, you know, hitting your triceps really hard. You're going to be doing variations, you know, of bench, but there's going to be a lot of bench variations. It's not going to be as much like, oh, today we're benching and then we'll do like some push-ups and then we'll do some med ball passes.
On a side note, because we got this specific question this week, what is in your opinion, what would you say is the correlation between overhead press and bench? Because the question asked, okay, if I want to increase my bench, should I be doing overhead press?
So I don't think it's a bad exercise, but I don't think...
Does it take away, do you think, if someone wanted to become a power lifter and improve their bench, should they be doing overhead press?
I wouldn't make it a centerpiece of my program personally. I don't think it's a bad exercise. I think that you could make the case that an overhead press, but probably more so a push press, has more athletic carryover than a bench press, because you're using the legs to drive an upper body movement, it's very rare in actual sports that you're just going to strictly press. You're usually going to be driving your legs into it. It's going to be more of a dynamic movement. Most of the the top powerlifters I know, in their programming and coaches and stuff, strictly from a powerlifting perspective, I would say most of them don't place a priority on overhead press, but some incorporate it. And part of that is learning.
Or they do incline.
Incline for sure, but just a straight up overhead
press.
Straight
military press,
if your shoulders are the weak point, if you determine like weak shoulders is, or like front delts, is a weak point in your bench, then maybe you would need to use more of that. For most people, it's probably not. It's definitely probably more triceps before front delts, in my experience.
Gotcha.
You never get the triceps strong enough for a big bench. And doing so...
Stabilizers, baby.
Doing so is going to put a lot less mileage on your joints if done smartly than training really heavy overhead pressing. Really heavy overhead pressing for most people just beats the shoulders up, with a barbell especially.
Oh, yeah.
Dumbbell is another story. A slight incline is better, but straight up military pressing or behind the neck military pressing, it can be pretty good.
I don't even do behind the neck military press anymore, man. I used to love that, but I just, it was my neck too. Like your neck, your shoulders, everything's just, When it comes to this, when the question came in, because the question came in two formats. It asked, okay, does bench press take away from overhead press? And does overhead press take away from bench press?
Yeah.
And when I kind of dug into the kinesiology of it, developing the shoulders, I think, would improve the development of the bench. But I do think there is an argument that, and I don't even know, if this is overhead press an Olympic by itself? That's not an Olympic. It's not an Olympic.
It used to be.
It used to
clean and press, which was a power clean into just a strict press.
Right.
Used to be an Olympic lift. It's not anymore.
There is a lot of, there's peer-reviewed is what I was reading up on, and there's peer-reviewed evidence to suggest that bench press can and does take away from overhead press. Whether that's your
take away, like it make it worse. Is that what you're saying?
Take away, like make it worse, doing bench press, because it tightening of the pectoralis rolls the shoulders forward, and the mobility that is needed to properly do a snatch or to do anything overhead, apparently that hinders it.
If it got to the point where you were losing mobility because of it, then I could say yes, definitely.
Yeah. And guys, this is a conversation for somebody.
This is fun to talk about.
But this is for somebody who is doing something, what 1% of the population would even care about. Most people would not care about this. They just want to train and get stronger overall. But this is to that person that is developing a skill for an event or a specific movement pattern that has to do with competition. So
let me finish that topic though. So most Olympic lifters don't do a lot of bench press. They might do a little bit. Some don't do any. It's not a big part of the training.
Got it.
Part of it is because there's not really a true press in the Olympic lifts. The snatch, there's not really a press in there.
Right.
In the jerk, you're using your legs. So you might do some standing presses, but push press is going to be a much bigger accessory than just a straight press.
Push press is more of a CrossFit.
Well, it comes from Olympic lifting.
Okay.
So a push press just means you're pressing the bar overhead, but you're incorporating a dip and drive from the legs. So you're not just standing still and then just pressing up overhead. You got the bar in the front rack, you're dipping into your legs, then you're exploding through the legs, and that drives the bar off your shoulders, and then you finish it.
Got it.
With the press. So because of that leg drive, that's what you're doing when you do a jerk, right? You're starting with the dip and drive, and then instead of finishing with the press, you're punching under and you're locking it out.
Locking out the elbows, but the knees are still a little flexed, right? You're kind of down
in a jerk.
In the jerk.
You got it because you got to get under it, catch it, and if you don't catch it with lockdown elbows, it's a no lift. If your elbow buckles or you catch it bent and then press it out, it's a no lift. It has to be locked out.
That's got to be disappointing.
But some of the strongest overhead pressers, probably the strongest overhead pressers in the world, are strongmen, and they do bench. Most of them do. Bench is definitely part of their programming. So as long as you're smart with not getting too tight to where you can't get a good overhead position, I don't think benching would hurt your overhead press because you're still strengthening your shoulders, you're strengthening your triceps.
Yeah.
Pecs are not a big part of overhead pressing.
It's true because Brian Shaw, Eddie Hall, they're doing bench like all the time.
Oh, yeah.
They're doing those single dumbbell overhead press.
Dumbbell overhead press, log press, all that stuff.
That's true. I didn't even think about that. That's a really good point.
But for somebody who needs to strengthen their shoulders and their goal is bench pressing, something that I would consider doing would be a landmine press.
Okay.
Of
a bench press variation.
No.
Of a shoulder press.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So like a standing landmine press,
Got
or
it.
there's attachments you can get, where you like a Viking press or whatever.
Yep.
The reason for that is because it's a bit, it's more of a shoulder healthy, in my opinion, way to press, because you're not jamming that shoulder up, especially if you take the extreme of like a behind the neck military press, but even in front of the head, the landmine press is allowing you to press in a plane that's not impinging the shoulder quite as much. And it has the benefit of allowing your scapula to move because it's freely moving. Your scapula, you're getting upward rotation of your scapula as you're pressing, which is something that you want to consider having in your program if you're doing a lot of bench press. Because if you're trying to bench heavy, you really want to tuck those shoulder blades down and back and have them in there tight for a heavy barbell bench press. So it's going to set the shoulders. It's going to reduce that range of motion. If you're a power lifter,
lat pull down. If you're doing bench, warm up with lat pull down.
Lat pull downs, rows, all that stuff. You want that really tight for a good heavy bench press. But if that's all you do, you could be creating some other problems there by kind of getting those shoulder blades glued in place. Sure. So I would definitely recommend having, even if it's in your warm-ups or something, some push-ups where you're really protracting at the top of your push-up, like getting tall at the top, pushing away from the ground.
Interesting. Okay.
As well as, landmine pressing.
For mobility, not for bench so much. Okay.
Not so much for strength, but to keep your shoulders healthy. Because if you're only barbell benching, dumbbell benching, whatever, you're having, and then if you're on a good powerlifting program, you're doing a lot of back work too. You're rowing a lot. You're doing a lot of pull downs. Everything is down and back on your scapula. Yeah. And you want to make sure it's able to move in other planes as well, just to stay healthy.
Another good one is yoga pose, cat cow. You ever go through a cat cow flow?
All the time.
Oh, dude, just complete protraction, retraction of the shoulders. It's just outstanding. It's a great that's probably my favorite one to do before I do any big chest day or really
I like
mobility
it.
Days.
Yeah, even like deadlifts and stuff like that too. I find that you don't want to overdo it, but it's a helpful drill for somebody to learn how to establish a neutral spine, because you take them out of it both ways, right? You have them flex, arch, or round their back, extend, arch their back, and then you say, okay, now come to the middle of that, feel what that feels like, and that's
flex your core.
Squeeze your abs. And it's funny because you can have somebody really arch, and you say squeeze your abs, and then they'll suck right back into that neutral spine and say that's where we need to be. When you're deadlifting, we don't want to get out of here.
It feels so weird to people. I mean, because they don't live their lives in neutral.
It's also a good test to see if somebody has any idea of how to move their spine at all. You can get somebody in that drill and show them, and it doesn't look anything like it's supposed to look. And you're like, okay, this person doesn't have a good awareness of how their vertebrae move, or ability to segment out, or maybe that stuff.
A genetic.
Yeah, it could reveal
toward something going on.
Could
with the
reveal
spine,
something
scoliosis,
else.
All that sort of thing. One thing I did want to mention on the topic of the landmine press, we kind of came up on this in a video we did a few weeks ago. The single greatest attachment for any landmine press, whether that's shoulder press, bench press, anything you're doing, are those Spock grips. Those things that move because
I don't know what you're talking about.
So they're on the wall, and for traditionally they're for dumbbells.
Okay.
But see, what you can do is if you take one of those, so you see the attachment on the wall for the landmine it gets narrow. For the grip. That will fit around that. Okay. So if I'm doing overhead press and I want to stop, I just let go.
Oh, nice.
It's the biggest problem with it with the landmine is the like loading and unloading.
And
getting
it up.
Starting from a safe position.
No, I get it. That's cool.
Yeah. So we figured that out by accident. I think it was even. We were like live, and I was like, "Hey, try this," and then it worked.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So we've kind of talked about actually both Gen Pop and advanced in the middle. So now let's talk about youth.
I do have a question.
If
now's a good time, but someone was asking, will I gain muscle mass by doing HIIT training but doing it with weighters instead of cardio? And then the next question that is attached to it is, how do you gain muscle fast?
Eat a lot.
Yeah. So the first question, will I gain muscle if I do HIIT? And then what was the other part of that question?
But doing it with weighters instead of cardio.
I'm guessing they mean weights.
Weights instead of cardio. Well, I mean,
it doesn't really make a ton of sense, but
the difficult part with a lot of these questions is that they're kind of like open-ended and like vague. Like they don't. This person, I think they're kind of confusing what HIIT is. Or maybe if he's asking if he's going to gain weight, because HIIT almost always will involve some kind of resistance training. Cardio is HIIT, but HIIT usually has some sort of resistance training in it involved. It's just interval training.
HIIT is only specifying that you're training in intervals in which you're performing high intensity work and then you're resting. So that could be sprinting or assault bike. It's typically the same kind of movements, but like you could, do jumping jacks super fast for 10 seconds and then rest 50 seconds and like repeat that. Like that'd be HIIT training technically. But
if he's asking, am I going to gain? I would actually, because this is kind of getting into the realm of CrossFit, because I think this is what CrossFit tries to do is take HIIT and use weights instead of using, like you said, sprints, thrusters with a medicine ball, assault bike, anything like that. Will I gain? It's certainly not the best way to gain muscle.
If your pure goal is gaining muscle, it's probably not the best thing to be spending most of your time doing.
No,
I would, think you're saying, but I would say if you're going to be performing cardio, it's probably a good choice if your overall goal is gaining or preserving muscle, but you want to do cardio, it's a good choice.
It's a good choice, yeah.
Because it's not necessarily going to be counterproductive to maintaining muscle, whereas like some long, steady cardio can be.
Yeah.
And the only thing you got to do to see that is like look at the physique of a marathon runner versus a sprinter. They're both very lean, but a sprinter carries a lot of muscle mass because training in high intensity intervals like that is a much more anabolic than, training long, slow state kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're lifting and you want to perform some cardio, doing some sprints or bike sprints or some sort of HIIT intervals, I'd say it would be a good option.
And I would add that if you are sort of set on the idea that you want to do a longer distance cardio, I would always go toward hiking. Or something with a really steep incline. I find that somehow that is the exception to the rule with training long distance is going to cut into your muscle. I feel like if you are doing rucking or really, really high incline hiking, even longer hiking, I find that you do retain your muscle mass. At least I do. And I'm an avid hiker. I hike once, twice a week. I
mean, and it's not even that all long, steady cardio is going to make you lose all your muscle, because a lot of bodybuilders still swear by doing their, hour on the treadmill walking, or Stairmaster or something like that. So there's a way you can do it. But I think if you're trying to have maximum muscle mass, or say you're really just a lifter, but you don't want to be out of shape, so you want to just do something to kind of like make sure your heart works, doing doing loaded intervals can be a great way to do that, like weighted carries, for example, or sleds. Like say you set up a sled and you set up a trap bar with a decently heavy weight on it.
Yeah.
And you did a farmer's carry, you rested 30 seconds, you pulled the sled. You rested 30 seconds, you did a farmer's carry. Your muscles are going to be shot by that workout and your heart is going to be pounding.
I got something I'm going to show you when we're done here, and that is the flip sled. Dude,
it's horrible.
We got like sincerely almost sick after 3 sets of doing this thing. Like that is one of this is, I guess, the very first time we're publicly shouting out this company. This thing is, I think, the most versatile sled I've ever seen, in that you can also flip it as a tire.
Okay.
You've never seen anything like it. You can also do what are called lineman drives, and lineman drives are, I mean,
so you're driving into it.
You're driving it, but you're driving it from a much higher position than a normal sled.
Okay.
See, because sleds are usually compact and close to the ground. This thing's at an angle and it's up. So it's very comparable to the lineman drives that you'll get at, college universities, places with the big pads that they hit and they run. It's similar to that. But as far as cardio, I mean, we were gassed in 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes. And stuff like that is really, really good if you are trying to keep your muscle mass, but you're trying to also do cardio. And like you said, and I cannot advise this enough. Everybody, I don't care who you are, you need to be doing some kind of aerobic conditioning, some kind. I don't care if it's swimming. You need to be doing something. You can't just do nothing. Athlete's heart is a real thing, and by neglecting that whole side of your fitness, it just does you such a disservice in the long run. Yeah,
and people who are, when they're talking about cardio, they got to understand that, like, all you're really trying to do, from like what Brandon's talking about, is train your aerobic capacity, or like train your heart. So if your thing is not running or whatever, like, you could set up on your off day from hard lifting, like, you could set up a circuit of light weightlifting exercises, and you could move through that for 30 minutes. And as your heart is going to be in that same zone as if you were doing, something else, going for a light swim. You're still training your heart, but if that's not your thing, like, you can find a way to make it work. I don't know if you're familiar with Cal Dietz from University of Minnesota. He's a strength coach.
I'm not.
But that's what he would have, I believe, like, his throwers do for, like, aerobic training. In a certain,
light intervals on weights. On 5
so
or 6
he would
circuits.
have like a heart rate zone that he wanted them in, and then he would set up light stuff. Could be just like some arms, band arms, whatever, like little stuff like that. And you'd say, just keep moving through this. Your heart rate needs to stay in this zone, and that was like their cardio, because he didn't want them running. Like he wanted to keep a lot of mass, stay very explosive.
Sure.
But you're just trying to train your heart, and so
I feel like the objection that I would have to that kind of cardio is that if you're on a program, and maybe you're not, maybe you're on a program where one of your days, maybe you've segmented a special part of the week where, okay, I haven't done lower body or upper body in at least 48 hours, and I can do something like this. For me, I like setting up a split between my conditioning days and my weightlifting days. If I was that coach and they said, okay, I want you to design a conditioning training day for these guys, I don't necessarily think that I would do, okay, here's an arm circuit, here's a bench circuit, I'm going to go light, but I'm going to have you do all of these things. Well, okay, most likely some of those things have been hit in the last 24 hours. And they've been hit probably pretty hard, because if this is their conditioning day and this is supposed to be cardio, well, that means weights are still in the mix. Maybe weights are in the mix that same day. Maybe we need to do, field training work or something like that. And that's why I like primarily lower body loaded, cardio that's hit. So that I know, okay, I don't have to worry about, when is the last time you did shoulders or upper. I guess I could just limit this and say that I would avoid writing in upper body hit training exercises on days where I'm trying to hit conditioning, because most likely those body parts have been hit recently.
In the structure of the week.
Right.
Yeah, and that would come down to like the rest of the program structure and your preference. Like, my favorite thing for cardio is to do hill sprints. Like, that's just what I like. It makes me feel athletic. It's lower impact than sprinting on fast ground, because you're not striking as hard. Your stride's not as long. And I sprint up the hill, walk down, rest 30 seconds to 90 seconds depending on what I'm doing, and do that 10 to 20 times.
Where do you go?
Usually dog park.
Just the dog park right there.
It's super easy. It's a good hill. It's probably big. 40 yards maybe from bottom to the top.
It's a steep incline.
It's a steep incline, and that'll kick your butt. That'll get your heart really going. Your abs will be sore if you haven't done it for a while. Your hip flexors will be sore because you're really moving very explosively.
Right.
Something like that can really complement building muscle, also staying athletic. So I like hill sprints as another option, but Dude, what was that other question?
Yeah, so someone is just starting their fitness journey. They are 235 pounds, and they are terrified of loose skin. Do you guys have any tips?
Just starting their fitness journey? Did they,
a few days ago.
Did they give any kind of an age indication?
They did not, but...
This is actually a good transition, though, because I want to talk about... younger populations, but we'll limit it to anyone who's starting out. Somebody who's just starting out. We'll answer his question, and then we'll go younger. Sorry. Go
30 female.
30-year-old female? Mm-hmm. Okay, and she's how big did she say she was?
235 pounds.
Okay. Well, right off the bat, I can say she definitely needs to be on a meal plan. That's probably the very first thing that I would tell her to do. If she came to me and she was a 235-pound female that is 30, how old?
30 years old.
30 years old. Yeah. I mean, as to her question pertaining to loose skin, that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
It's very tough because if there's a lot of it, there's very little you can do about that.
Surgery.
Yes.
This is one of the very few things where I would say, I mean, but I'll say this too. You've got to earn that surgery because you got to get that weight off first, and the loose skin is probably one of the lower problems you're going to have. Meaning that you've gotten to this point because of a lot of bad habits. You've got to address those because it's not just enough. We have I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. We know somebody who has gone through almost this exact same thing where she was, 100, 200, 250, overweight, lost the weight, got the skin, did the surgery, put the weight back on. You getting to this point and then hopefully getting to the point where you need to have this surgery because you've lost so much weight and this is just, it's a problem for you. That's good, but you need to make sure that getting there is establishing the habits that you will keep going with because otherwise you're going to spend, and that I don't know what that costs. I assume it's not cheap because that's a cosmetic surgery. You're going to spend a lot of money doing that and a lot of time to get there. Make sure that whatever your training is, you have formed good habits, and eating habits are going to be your biggest thing. I can guarantee that this person has some gaps in their diet. This person needs work on their nutrition.
Yeah, I mean, for being that overweight, nutrition is going to be absolutely the primary thing, right? Like, it's not, you don't become, that degree of overweight without, just from like not working out.
Yeah.
Like, you can lose all that weight just by managing the diet and walking a lot. Like, it doesn't even need to be hardcore working out.
No.
But it needs to be, I would recommend that person would start with small steps of implementing new habits like Brandon talked about that they can stick with and then to build upon that. So, figure out what your first movement habit's going to be and your first diet habit's going to be. Make it something that is challenging enough that, it's still a step forward, but it's attainable enough that you can be consistent with it and you're going to be successful at it.
Sure.
And then build that momentum, because I don't think it's a smart strategy for the majority of people to go gung-ho, completely out, meal plan, I'm going to lose all the weight. Now, some people can do that, but I would say more often than not, it could be a hot start and then they burn out, or it's unsuccessful, they get discouraged.
Especially if they're doing it by themselves.
Yeah, it can be very difficult. So, your health is a long-term battle. Obviously, you want to take it seriously and you don't want to spend more time unhealthy than you need to. But set goals that can be accomplished, get that momentum and then build on it. Maybe that's 3 10-minute walks a day or 1 10-minute walk a day.
Yep.
And, a serving of vegetables at every meal. And that's something that you can stick to, whatever it is. Just
cut out. It's funny. I've said this before. Most people have a general understanding of how to eat healthy. Most people do. It's just getting the relationship they have with food to shift that is their biggest dilemma.
Yeah.
If we were to take a poll of 100 Americans, not people who are fit, not people who are into this, if we were to just ask them, hey, what do you think you probably shouldn't eat? All of them would say, yeah, I probably shouldn't eat donuts. Probably shouldn't have sugar. Probably shouldn't eat all that processed stuff. Like, yeah, okay, you know that. Okay, so that is very clear and understood. But your relationship with food.
Right.
How do you treat food? Is food your coping mechanism? Is food the thing you turn to when things aren't going well? The list goes on. You need to figure out how food interacts with you on a daily basis and realize that most likely that mentality needs to shift. You need to see food as your sustenance through the day, getting you to a point where you are at least cutting out, we'll just say processed sugar. That's a simple step. And people oftentimes when we talk like this, like, okay, land it for me. Just tell me something, because you tell me something I need to do. Cut out processed sugar. Don't eat anything that is a processed. Eat fruit. If fruit is your only source of sugar in your diet, most likely you're going to see improvement in your day to day.
Yeah, and I think for this person, I think it's healthy, speaking of the relationship with food and exercise for that matter, to definitely, I think, framing it from, you have to find a motivation, or I think a reason behind what you're doing that's going to be important enough for you to make lifestyle changes and make habit changes. Because at this, the why behind what you're doing has to be stronger than your desire to not accomplish that and to sink back into your own habits. Definitely. So maybe that's your health. Maybe it's not just the way you look, but maybe it's like you're actually wanting to improve your health and improve your lifespan, or your ability to be with your children or grandchildren, like whatever that is. There needs to be some serious consideration done. I don't like the word motivation, but in terms your reason, your why behind why you want to make this change. And then that's got to be the thing that you're going to have to draw upon, because it's going to be difficult as you're trying to form these habits to be able to stick with that and to build upon it.
Sure.
But if you have a reason that's strong enough driving you to do it, you can do anything. But if the desire to continue the habits that made you unhealthy is stronger than your desire to make those changes, you're never going to be able to be successful, because you might be able to stick with something for a period of time, but you're going to fall back into it.
Yeah.
But
you
for
gotta learn to hate the habit.
For the skin thing, that might be a tough, that might be something that you might have to handle surgically or something at some point. Being younger,
that's a tough one.
Definitely probably gives you a better chance at having some
she said
elasticity
she's 30,
there.
Right? She's at 30. I'll say this. Okay. I mean, here's one. The ice bath. Doing cold training will improve your skin. That's one thing that it definitely does. There's some research out there showing that it's kind of like a polar bear facial for your whole body. So there is something that anybody can do, and that is, if I could probably list the reasons of why you should do cold training, that's probably the lowest on the list, is the elasticity of your skin. Yeah. There are so many benefits, and that's a conversation for another day, but that's something else that anybody can do. Anybody can go to the store and get ice, put it in their tub, fill it up, and go in. That is something to consider for this individual if the skin thing is, and I get it. I get why that's a concern. Having that happen, lose all this weight, because this person at 235 at 30 years old, most likely we're talking about 100-pound transformation. Probably, yeah, or more. Depends on
the height and
weight, everything. But yeah, those are some good to cheat.
I'll throw a super off the wall one out at you too. Charles Poliquin, strength coach. He passed away recently. He was like a real pioneer as a strength coach. He worked with all kinds of Olympians and Olympic teams. Okay. He did a podcast. It was either his first or second podcast on Tim Ferriss's podcast. And this question was asked, and he recommended some herb, like a herbal supplement, natural thing that he swore was like a miraculous cure for this problem. I don't remember. It's on one of those two podcasts. It's Poliquin, Poliquin,
Hang on.
Tim Ferriss Experience.
Say it one more time.
Tim. Are you going to look it up?
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss, Charles Poliquin.
Tim Ferriss?
Yeah. I don't know. You're probably not going to look up Tim Ferriss, Charles Poliquin.
Okay.
Did you get Poliquin?
Mm-hmm.
Loose skin, just see if it comes up. It was like it was a small part of a longer podcast and they've done multiple, but he definitely gave an answer.
Maybe there's
I cannot vouch for it though, but he's a smart guy.
Yeah. There's certain people where even if I don't know what they're talking about, I can probably vouch for what they're saying.
He is Ian Danny's mentor.
Is he?
Charles Poliquin, yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know that?
Because Ian Danny was on Mark Bell's podcast and he talked about it.
Ian Danny went on Mark Bell's podcast?
On Powercast, yeah.
When?
A couple years ago.
Oh,
yeah.
You need to send me that episode.
Yeah. It's
Dude,
on there.
I didn't know Ian Danny did anything like that.
It's the only thing that's on YouTube with him. But he was on the Powercast and he talked about it. He's his mentor.
He stays quiet. He's he's a brilliant coach.
Yeah.
But he's not much in the public eye.
Is it go to cola, the herb for repairing loose skin?
Yes,
okay.
that's it.
Go to cola.
Yeah, so it's
how's it spelled?
GOTU space KOLA.
Go to cola. Literally.
How do you like that, huh?
I like it. There we go.
There's a more like longer term. It's called Centella asiatica. That's CENTELLA. ASIATICA.
For this podcast, we'll drop the link when we do post it.
I'll consider it.
We'll we'll drop the link for that because that's dropping some real world advice.
There you go. I have no experience, but
just heard about it today.
Yeah,
but
you just poisoned our audience.
She grows like a
we got to put a disclaimer on the bottom of the video. Not medical advice.
I know nothing about this. Yeah. Well, take everything we just said, and I would start, like Chris said, start with manageable steps. And if you want to take a little bit more on, look into this herb. I don't even know anything about it, but that's a good way to start.
So to your question of young population,
let's talk about it real quick because we're gonna
wrap it up.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I think it's important with younger kids getting into training is really to make it fun. Yeah. And, that sounds kind of cheesy, but I think getting kids to like training and starting with that foundation is super important because, before you hit puberty and stuff, like, you're not necessarily going to see a ton of like muscle mass gain from training, right? I mean, you can definitely improve coordination, body awareness, athleticism, all that kind of stuff. Like, I think some of the best things that you can start with is like basic gymnastics movements. Yeah. Just to teach that body awareness, like super like stuff you wouldn't even think of, like doing somersaults and different jumping courses, monkey bars, all that kind of silly stuff that kids miss nowadays because they're not out playing as much. You're not going to get that stuff playing video games. I sound like a crotchety old man, but you're not going to get those skills playing video games.
Kids love tires.
Yeah, flipping the tires, jump on a tire, but fun things, make little games, make little competitions, but teach skills, hidden in there. It's like sneak the vegetables into the meal kind of thing. Teach the skills, make it fun. Definitely. So they develop a good relationship with the gym and with training. And then you get into the more advanced stuff, obviously, as they progress. But, I mean, there's really no limit to necessarily what you could teach a kid. I mean, in China, they've got 10-year-olds doing Olympic lifts with PVC pipes, until they hit puberty, so they have perfect technique. And once they can start getting strong, they get strong, and they're just like a factory over there, But it's a common misconception that's been pretty well debunked by every major authority on strength conditioning, like in the United States and probably worldwide, that resistance training like stunts children's growth. It's a myth. It's not true. There are certain times in which, like, they call it peak height velocity, where you're growing the fastest. Think about just like big growth spurts when you're in high school or junior high. Yeah. Which you are more vulnerable to certain injuries during that time. Sure. So you'd want to be careful and smart. But there's nothing that says resistance training is going to stunt your growth if you do it as a kid. I mean, just think about it. Doing push-ups is resistance training. No one thinks that's going to stunt your growth, but all of a sudden you flip over and you put 2 dumbbells in their hand on a bench doing a bench press, and whoa, you're going to stunt your growth. Like, why? There's nothing different that's necessarily happening to the body by using some 10-pound dumbbells versus doing a push-up. Right. But it's just been kind of this like idea that's been put out there. But if you look up any of the position statements from National Strength Conditioning Association, NASM, sports medicine, any of that stuff,
I think I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, but power lifts would be the thing that I would most likely not so much incorporate into youth.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely things that you would probably prefer or shy away from, but I go all multilateral. If you're splitting up multilateral and specialty, kids are all multilateral. But I mean, teaching a kid to squat with or deadlift with a training bar, with like a little 10-pound bar, nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
It's not going to hurt them, and it's going to set them up for success. So when they get into that high school weight class, they don't look horrible and hurt their knee squatting. So
kids
again,
learn fast too.
It's kind of a full circle right there. Coming back to the first discussion with older adults, it's all about the progression or regression and the appropriate starting point. There's no exercises that are inherently dangerous or going to injure you or something like that. But you want to understand what your goal is, who you're working with, and what they want to achieve, where their starting point is, and you can find an appropriate progression for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And based on age, based on prior experience, all of that comes into play. A youth may have the same quote unquote starting line as someone in an older population.
Absolutely.
Could easily happen.
Yeah.
It's everybody. We're all the same species. Everybody's got a starting line. It's figuring out where that is. That is the biggest. It's certainly the biggest challenge, I think, for the individual, but it's one of the bigger challenges for the trainer as well.
Yep.
Just learning that and becoming a professional at finding that. That's half the reason you're being paid as their trainer, is to figure out where they need to start. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast. If you guys like our content and you want to see more of it, click the subscribe button down below, or as always, you can follow us on any of our other social media platforms. Stay fit, you guys. Stay healthy, and become the 1%.